Askeladd and Bjorn are complimenting the London Bridge, claiming it looks more like a fortress. Bjorn adds he only came along because Askeladd believed London would be a pushover, but Askeladd didn't expect that Thorkell, one of the mightiest Danish warriors, would betray his men and switch sides to England. Bjorn is disgusted that Thorkell swapped teams for gold, but Askeladd reminds him that as mercenaries they effectively do the exact same thing, as do most neighboring clans. Siding with the winner is all that matters. But Bjorn says it's not the gold he does it for, it's simply the killing. Bjorn asks Askeladd if he has a plan, and Askeladd's only plan is to once again call for Thorfinn. He tells the kid to go and get him Thorkell's head, and Thorfinn asks what his reward will be. Askeladd laughs, saying he will offer him yet another duel, and that Thorfinn simply never learns from fights he can't win, just like his father. Thorfinn doesn't appreciate that, smashing his jug of wine, and saying their next duel will be Askeladd's last. Askeladd throws him back his dagger and tells him to get started. If Thorfinn can get Thorkell's head, Askeladd will give him any number of duels he wants. A single ship approaches the bridge. The English open fire, but Floki calls out saying he's simply an envoy for a message, but the English don't care. Eventually, the gigantic Thorkell stops them to converse with Floki. Floki informs Thorkell that the king is feeling merciful, and will allow the lives of all the men to live along with keeping their possessions, if they surrender. Defending further is pointless, as the King of England has already fled to France. He also desperately wants Thorkell to return to his rightful spot in the Danish army. Floki wonders why Thorkell would switch sides, since they used to fight together as brothers. Thorkell's response is very simple. First, he insults the English in Norse tongue, meaning they don't even notice their captain's remarks. He also adds that the result of the war is already decided, the English will likely lose. Floki misunderstands this as Thorkell wanting to rejoin, but Thorkell says that fighting as the underdog is endlessly more fun than constantly winning. Thorkell says enough talking, back to the action. Floki tries to offer Thorkell double what the English are paying, and Thorkell repays him with what's effectively a goddamn mountain. The men row as hard as possible in retreat. Floki informs the king of his failure in bringing back Thorkell, and the king orders him to launch an attack. Arrows fly back and forth, some hitting shields and some killing soldiers. One boat makes it to the bridge, and begins chopping it down. Thorkell brings another tree and rains hell down on the boat, wiping out a number of warships in total. Thorkell is mocking the tactics of the Danes, before noticing a young blonde-haired boy staring him down with a stoic face. Askeladd confirms the identity of Thorkell, and sends Thorfinn onto the bridge. Thorkell orders his men to leave the boy alone, as he looks like a lot of fun to fight. Swinging the tree at Thorfinn, he jumps off it and lands cleanly on the bridge. He athletically dodges more of Thorkell's swings, and the latter compliments his ability. He warns his men again not to touch Thorfinn, and will give the suicidal kid what he craves, throwing his tree away to fight with his bare fists. Thorfinn is insulted by this, thinking he's been underestimated. But as we soon find out, it is actually Thorfinn who's underestimating Thorkell. Thorfinn charges in, shocked at Thorkell's speed. He lands a cut, but Thorkell was quick to realize that Thorfinn was aiming for his wrists. He compliments the kid's strategy, and Thorfinn realizes that one punch from this man would likely kill him immediately. Thorkell is the next to engage, but Thorfinn dodges again before nearly landing a hit to his neck. Thorfinn realizes he's going to struggle hitting a vital point of this monstrous man. Thorfinn changes his strategy, jumping behind him and knocking him off balance. He uses this brief opening to finally stab the man. However, the result isn't what Thorfinn expected. Thorkell allowed himself to be stabbed through the hand, and while briefly mentioning the pain, now has a firm grip on Thorfinn and flings him around like a toy. Askeladd remarks Thorfinn is getting his ass handed to him, as we see him slammed into the bridge repeatedly. The retreat signal is drummed, and the army leave Thorfinn on the bridge alone. Thorkell is disappointed that the army is leaving after things were getting fun. He apologizes to Thorfinn as his troops have left him behind, but realizes the boy is completely unconscious. He tries to wake him up, when suddenly, Thorfinn's fight emerges and he frees himself from the giant's grasp. Thorkell is gobsmacked that Thorfinn hasn't lost the will to fight yet, and demands for the warrior's name. Thorfinn, son of Thors, which blows Thorkell's mind. He tries to ask if he is the son of the mighty troll of Yam, but Thorfinn immediately flees off the bridge. Thorkell waves him goodbye, complimenting Thorfinn's skills and saying they should fight again sometime. The devastated army are laying defeated, and Floki is informing the king that they will need a year, or 6 months at least, to break London, depending on the city's provisions. King Sweyn says this is too long, and will leave 4,000 troops behind to siege London while the rest march west. The leader of the 4,000 troops will be left to Prince Canute, which Canute's advisor strongly opposes. The king says that Prince Canute simply isn't a strong enough man, and needs to gain experience on the battlefield. Thorfinn emerges from the river. With a dislocated shoulder, sprained ankle, and broken ribs, he finds his way back to the army. Askeladd is shocked he's still alive, but says if he can't keep up with the troops he'll be left behind. Thorfinn pops his shoulder back into place, and starts marching. He reminisces on Thorkell's words. How can he find fighting fun? Nothing about war is fun whatsoever. The troops left behind to siege London are complaining about the prince being in charge of them. He's not fit to manage troops, but before they can finish their conversation a rock crashes down out of nowhere. The English assume it's a catapult, but nope, it's just a giant Thorkell throwing rocks from the bridge. He goads them to attack, and the men desperately try to convince Ragnar, the prince's advisor, to retaliate with an assault, but he warns them that's exactly what Thorkell wants. A soldier joins Thorkell on the bridge, where he tells Thorkell the opposition are likely being careful since they're being led by the Danish prince. This excites Thorkell greatly, realizing there's such a prime hostage to capture. Thorfinn awakes in a beautiful field. His mother and sister are there, and the men of his village are slacking off, as always. Realizing it's time for dinner, he leaves to call for his father. Thorfinn joyfully rides on his father's shoulders as the two converse about the beauty of the warm lands therein. Thors reminds his son that it's his duty to protect his mother and sister, and how both are eagerly awaiting his return, before also stating the wonderfulness of having people care about you. He tells Thorfinn to stop his quest for revenge, stating it's not something that would make him happy. Suddenly, this imaginary village is attacked and the village folk are being taken away in chains. Thorfinn shouts that they need to do something, but arrows fly over and he watches the fate of his father a second time. He screams, waking himself up from the dream. He leaves the barn he's sleeping in search for some quiet. We're cut to Askeladd's men raiding an English village. Two men begin to bicker about wanting to raid a larger village, and Bjorn converses with another Viking about the shortcomings of this year's raids. Their conversation is interrupted by the earlier two men breaking out into a fight. Bjorn allows the fight to proceed and says if one of them dies to clean up the body. Thorfinn finds some peace and quiet, and acknowledges how nice the land looks. He's interrupted by Askeladd, who appears to be doing the same. He asks Thorfinn if the men are too loud for him, but Thorfinn bluntly says not to talk to him like they're friends. He reminds Askeladd that he's not one of his men, and when Askeladd is rotting in the ground, nobody will remember him. That's dark stuff, Askeladd replies, and remarks Thorfinn still has a lot of growing up to do. However, he admits the day will come when Thorfinn will likely kill him. Time is on Thorfinn's side and Askeladd is growing old. He begins to lecture Thorfinn on the history of England. It was once a more advanced civilization led by the Romans, but was conquered by the Saxons. The age of men is growing old and Askeladd realizes it. Suddenly, they notice a single rider approaching them. They call out to him, and he rides over. He explains that he's a soldier from the 4,000 men led by Prince Canute, and is on his way to link up with the main army. Askeladd explains the main army is very far away, and the soldier wonders why Askeladd and his men are here. After saying to simply liberate some nearby villages, the man becomes angered that they're separated from the main army without permission, but Askeladd offers him a fresh horse if he comes back with them. It's then they learn that Thorkell and 500 men attacked Prince Canute's army, and ended up taking Canute hostage. On top of that, he is shadowing the main army and marching towards them too. The soldier asks Askeladd to join him, and together they can rescue the prince from captivity. Askeladd briefly mutters some nonsense about wanting to fade away in the twilight, confusing Bjorn. But suddenly, he decapitates the man heading to the main army, and gives his men the new orders. They will rescue the hostage from Thorkell alone, and claim all the compensation from either the Danish or English king, depending on whoever pays more. This gives his men the motivation they desperately needed, but Bjorn is concerned. Askeladd and his 100 men versus Thorkell and his 500, can they really win? Who knows, Askeladd says, but the twilight Askeladd keeps mentioning is soon approaching, and they should raise as much hell as possible while they're still able to. That's all for this one, Kings. I hope you enjoyed as always. Make sure to smack that subscribe button harder than Thorkell smashed Thorfinn into the bridge earlier, and I'll see you all in the next one.